25 years ago, the Lange 1 was launched, and now, 25 years later, it's time to have a look back at the Lange 1 family with watch journalist SJX of watchesbysjx.com. So, of course, you were aged only 8 when the Lange 1 was first released, but you did get to know about it fairly soon in your career, didn't you?
I first saw the Lange 1 sometime in the late 90s when I was a teenager. I had just gotten interested in watches at the time, so I did some research. I went online. The internet was new then. I had books, and that's where I saw the Lange 1. And it looked like a really interesting watch because at the time, such a design with off-center subdials, it wasn't common, so the watch was unusual. And then I was fortunate enough that a retailer in Singapore was quite an early retailer of Lange, so I could see a watch in person. And then it struck me that the watch didn't just look unusual, but it also felt unusual. It was heavy, the movement was very nicely finished.
So you got a chance to pick one up at the boutique?
This is like late 90s, early 2000s, around the year 2000. And yeah, so that was my first encounter with the watch.
So the Lange family has grown since then. And of course the Lange 1 family has grown since then as well. Have you kept an eye on it as it's developed over the years?
I have. It has evolved it just evolved to become quite a diverse line of watches. From the very complex and very expensive to the original, which is still quite affordable. But I still think the original Lange 1 design, 38.5mm case, to me, still the best. The proportions, the size, it works the best.
What would you say, because you're quite a design expert, what would you say from a design point of view, what was the shock of the new in 1994?
I think it was probably the fact that the dial is asymmetric, it's unusual, but it's still designed, it still has a lot of order in the design. You know, there's order in the chaos, so to speak. If you draw a grid on the dial, a 3x3 box, you realize all of the important elements of the dial sit on the axis of the grid. So even though everything seems like it's all over the place, it's actually a very orderly design, which at the time was really unusual. But it also shows the amount of thought that was put into designing the watch.
And the thing that I first came across your work was when you shared that article about the typography, the font that Lange is using. And I feel that for me, I loved that article and I shared it widely because I've always known that I liked the look of it, and you explained to me why I liked the look of it. So could you take us through, on the Lange 1, how does the typography work in terms of the design as a whole?
The typography, the article was written together with a designer, a professional designer, and he in professional terms, firstly it's the font, the style of the letters, which in this case sort of gives the watch a more serious look because it's a serif font, so it feels a bit more old-fashioned, a bit serious, classical, and it's also what they call kerning, which I didn't know until I went to study this. Kerning is the space in between the letters in a word. Yeah. In a standard computer word processing software, most of the time the space is standard. But here, all of the spaces are different to suit each of the letters.
So on a Lange & Söhne watch, the spacing
the letters are not the standard space you would find on, say, Microsoft Word. So it gives a much more proper look. Most of the time, if you're not a professional, even for myself, you feel it's different, but you can't really put your finger on it.
Exactly.
But for professionals, they realize it's the weight of the letters, the thickness of the lines, the spaces of the letters between each of the letters. All of this makes a difference. And the difference is that it gives the watch a different feel. Even if everything had been exactly the same, but a sans serif font was used, a more modern looking font, it would immediately give the watch a completely different feel. Even though it's something that is so minor, most people can't really put their finger on it.
But you say again that is something you can't do by maths. You can't do it via a word processor telling it you must do it this way. There's some other ingredient. Well, it's magic? What is it?
I think it was the people in charge, the designers at the time. They had just a really, really good eye. That is what Tony DeHaas told me as well. In the early days, it was a much smaller company with a small group of people, but they really managed to establish a design language for the brand that is still used today. Everything from, say, the lugs of the watch, where you have this notch on the side. This was one of the intentional design elements. Tony was saying, when I visited the factory last year, he showed me the prototypes, and they were originally ordinary lugs that were flush with the case. But Gunther Blumlein, the CEO at the time, he used a file to cut a notch into the side to make it different, because it was important for them that the watch looked different from other luxury watches on the market. And to look different, attention had to be paid to all the details, the lugs, the typography, the design, even the buckles, which have a bar on the back, which most brands don't have, and that was done to make it sturdier and heavier and to give the watch a high quality, heavy feel, so that feel German rather than a very thin and light watch. So all of this, the font and so on, I think it was just the right package together. And because it works so well, it is something that the brand can still use today and sort of carrying the brand forward, even with new watches. It's the same, a lot of the same elements are still used.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to SJX. That was a fantastic interview.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.